Hello everyone, it's David again, talking about Season 2, Episode 14, There All the Honor Lies. I've had a little bit of feedback from some of the Facebook groups. Someone says that I talk too long and explain too much, which I'm trying to get more feedback from them to see what they meant by that. So if you guys have any feedback along those lines, please put it down below in the comment section or send me some sort of message. Trust me, I was a nurse for 18 and a half years. I am used to people telling me all kinds of things. I do have a voice like an old grandma. It's a gift from my mother. By the way, in case you hear some weird sounds going off on the background, it's one of my cats making his presence known. So, if you guys have any constructive criticism, please don't be afraid of hurting my feelings. Put it down below. At any rate, Babylon 5. They are looking to generate upwards of 2 million credits that could be generated by opening up a gift shop and licensing merchandise. So says the Senate committee. And we learn that Sheridan is supposed to meet Ambassador Kosh for another lesson. So, as Sheridan's going off for his Kosh lesson, he bumps into a pickpocket who steals his link, and Sheridan goes hauling off after him. Now, if these things can be, turned off and it's only bonding to one person's DNA and stuff like that, why bother running off if this guy's got, a 10-second head start? Just report the damn thing missing, have it shut off, and then it's worthless. But, doesn't make for a good plot line if that were to happen. So Sheridan chases after this guy, and he bumps into a Minbari supposedly from the Warrior caste, and he's thrown violently to the ground. And he conveniently finds a PPG right next to him, and he ends up plugging the Minbari after he yells "death first." And another Minbari, who conveniently also happens to be planted nearby, gets scared and runs off. And we cue the entrance. Now, two main actors that we find out here are guest stars. Julie Caitlin Brown as Guinevere Corey. She's born January 26, 1961 in San Francisco. She's been on Star Trek TNG. She was born Julie Andrich, and you all will know her as the second Natoth, who replaces Mary Kay Adams. But she plays a lawyer, a human lawyer in this one. So you get to see her with no makeup on and her usual self. And we have Sean Gregory Sullivan. He plays Ashan the Minbari. He was Phil in Wayne's World. Other than a cursory list of some episodes and stuff he's in, I have not found much information. So if you got on him, like where he was born, if he's married, does he have any children? So if you guys find anything out about him, more than what I've been able to find out, please go ahead and post any links or post that down in the comment section. Well, due to the sensitivity of the whole shebang, given Sheridan's Star Killer's past, Delenn is insisting on a dual Minbari investigation conducted by Mr. Lanier, since Delenn is extremely out of favor with most of her Minbari friends. Let's see here. As they're going along, or Delenn goes off to set up things, Michael Garibaldi is asking Sheridan for a description of the Minbari witness who supposedly saw this whole thing, and he looks at him and says, "bald, with a bone on his head," and kind of storms off. Now, as we all know, every Minbari is bald with a bone on their head, except now famously for Madame Delenn. We go on and we zip on. Ashan is being questioned by Mr. Garibaldi Mr. Garibaldi said something along the lines of, I hope you're telling the truth, or I think you're telling the truth, or something like that. And LaShawn says, that is fortunate since Minbari do not lie. We find out later they actually can lie under limited circumstances. Lanier ends up following Mr. Garibaldi in the investigation, and Garibaldi complains to Sheridan, it seems like every time I do something, he's always there. Well, Mike, it's a murder investigation, and when you only have one witness, supposedly, to this whole thing, yeah, you're gonna have him kind of following you around. That's just the way it works. I'm sure a lot of professional or police officers get annoyed when families hire detectives. A lot of them complain that that sort of thing happens. How or why that would affect an investigation, I'm not sure exactly what, but there you go. Anyway, we zip on in, and a obviously intoxicated Veer bumps into Talia and kind of bumbles off and we later find out Veer has been replaced in his job. Oh no, what are we ever to do? We end up according to when they're kind of meeting about what each side has found out, Lanier says that Lavelle, the Minbari who was murdered, said, "Day off for Erst," which means I yield to your authority, which of course sounds very eerily like death first in English. So, very coincident, very fortunate coincidence that Minbari language in that one instance sounds very close to something else in English. So, Sheridan ends up zipping around and says, I want to talk to your witness, he is lying. And Delenn looks at him and says, just shocked, and says, for your sake, I did not hear that, and neither did you, Lanier. And we find out why. Minbari do not lie, and she says it would be a stain on honor and soul. For someone of another race to make such an accusation would require an immediate and fatal response from the accused. And he says, well, then he is in error where the truth is involved. And that particular quote I mentioned, because that is memmed quite a bit, then he is in error where the truth is involved. And we zip on down, and people are talking about Babylon 5 Emporium now is opening, and they're talking about 20% off to station staff and some of the other good things. So, anyway, this lady comes in the middle of a conversation. Genevieve Corey, a.k.a. Natoth, introduces herself as Sheridan's lawyer. And she basically is like, dude, what are you doing talking to all these people? You're an accused person. Everyone knows when an investigation, and you're the target of investigation, just about everyone I know of knows the first thing is you shut up and you only talk to your attorney. When I was going through my workers' comp case, when I was a nurse and hurt my back, first thing I did was I talked to an attorney, and literally it was like just this iron curtain had just fallen down from my employer. They would not say boo to me. They would only talk to my attorney. And then my attorney would relay what they had said, Quite an interesting experience, let me tell you that. Even people I'd known for decades would not talk to me. But, that's how that goes. Earth Dome has decided to indict Captain Sheridan. And she says if this goes to trial, Captain Sheridan will have to step down as Commander of Babylon 5, probably permanently. Well, crap-ola. Ambassador Kosh goes to Sheridan's quarters and the lesson, and Sheridan tries to poo-poo him, and Kosh is basically not taking no for an answer. Kosh takes Sheridan down to the worst part of down below, and he said if Garibaldi knew we were down here without an escort, he would go right up the chimney flue. And he's like, what's down here? Because Kosh wants him to go into this area, and he says, one moment of perfect beauty. And he goes in, and this is the scene where these little monks kind of come out from nowhere, and there's a bunch of them, and this small room all of a sudden becomes this big cavernous area, and they start doing this nice, wonderful Gregorian chant kind of thing. If you remember from the 90s when we had that, now that's what I call music volume 1, and then volume 2, and volume, I think they're up to 837 or something like that. But then they started getting in, now that's what I call meditation volume 1, and they would have like Enya and some of the others that kind of reminded me a lot of that. The one, and I guess, who are these guys, basically? Have we ever found out who these guys really are? Because I seem to, they're some sort of alien, I guess. And would Sinclair have known about them? Because it seems like to get into this big they would have had some superstructure of Babylon 5 had to have been constructed around them, and to make an area big enough to do this, presumably. Unless they're using some sort of, basically tricking Sinclair's mind into thinking he's in a big area when really he's still in this small confined space. This alien pushes forward a bowl, presumably seeking some sort of alms, and that harkens to a Buddhist tradition of when you go around in a lot of the Buddhist countries, they don't have lots of money or anything, so what you do is you go around with an alms bowl, and usually you go house to house, and the person will put rice, most often rice or lentils or some sort of bread that they've just made, whatever they've made and have handy, they put in this bowl. And then if you want, they will offer a teaching. And then you kind of, if not, they'll just politely bow their head and go on their merry way. And you just kind of go in for the next one if you have enough rice left over. Or whatever food it is. Usually it'll be something vegetarian, because a lot of the Buddhist monks are vegetarians. Not all. In fact, Siddhartha Gautama himself died of food poisoning from presumably eating pork. That's the most common story surrounding his death. Reminds me also of a guy, he's a Buddhist monk, or was a Buddhist monk. His name was Dr. Jack Cornfield. And he wrote the book After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. And he talks about going to, I believe back then it was still called Ceylon, Ceylon, it's modern day Sri Lanka, heavily Buddhist country, to get his PhD, or this may have come from when he was in Thailand, and got his Buddhist monk credentials. Anyway, he was back in New York, I guess, and was trying to go around with his alms bowl like they did in Asia, but nobody knew what the hell. Here's this guy with a shaved head in these red robes with this empty bowl trying to go around looking for alms, and they were like, huh? And so he eventually ended up going to the Thai embassy, and Thailand being a Buddhist country, they knew exactly what he wanted, so they said, wait right here, and they would go in and get some food or whatever and put it in his bowl, and he would either give them a teaching or whatnot, and then he would go on his way. After a while, he figured that was not going to work. This was, I believe, in the 60s, 60s or very early 70s, and so he, like most Buddhist teachers now here in the United States and in most Western countries, now basically they accept money. And if you go to a Buddhist retreat, they will hand out an alms bowl, and then you just put however much money you think that teaching is worth. So, of course, remembering these people also have a mortgage and a car payment, most likely. But anyway, that's kind of where these beings got that from. And Sheridan ends up taking one of his staff bars and putting it in the bowl. And if you look out as they're doing their meditation and Sheridan is sending out, if you look out at the back, I never noticed this before, but I noticed it just watching it for this particular commentary. Is Kosh keeping time? Because I see him kind of moving his head up and down like he's keeping time. So watch that particular scene and let me know what you think. I think Kosh is actually keeping time. Anyway, Londo goes up to Veer and he's like, "Oh, dude, it's drunk. This is a first. Well, I'm going to enjoy this one because I'm a pro." Now, being a recovering alcoholic myself, I know exactly what Londo is thinking, because every time I go and see one of my friends who is now newly drunk and has never been drunk before, I have a great time. Because let me tell you something, I've been down that road so many times. I know exactly what they're going through. And he says, "How many drinks have you had, Vera?" Expecting him to come up with some number like, 12 or something like that. And he says, 2. And he's like, 2? He's like, "Yeah, I like to nurse my drinks." Heavily memmed. And Veer complains, "Everywhere I go, I don't fit in and I'm asked to leave." And he mentions about being replaced. And so Londo basically, goes in and walks off with Veer's replacement orders. We zip on in, and Kosh and Sheridan are talking on the turbo lift. And Kosh leaves, Ivanova steps on, and she's like, "Oh, I see you done with your, your lesson. What did you learn?" And he's like, "Beauty in the dark." And she's, "Well, it must be working. You're talking like a Vorlon." Another mem there. Zip on in, and as Londo's going to discuss Veer's situation with Centauri Prime, he sees these women laughing, and there's a doll of him. And Londo is absolutely infuriated. We go in and we find out the reason he's infuriating is doesn't have any attributes. And as we know, Centauri have 6, okay? Inferring that the Centauri have 6 sex organs. And because this doll does not have any sex organs on it, that Londo is being symbolically cast in a bad light, is what they said. Castrated, basically. And so Sheridan orders all of the Londo dolls out the window. So we end up, Lanier ends up going and offer to the captain and offers to take responsibility for Lavelle because he is also of the third Fein, F-E-I-N, of Chudomo, C-H-U-O-D-O-M-O, and that's a Fein or clan that has served with over 700 years with honor and distinction. We learn later that the clan leaders of the Thane of Chutomo decided to act against Sheridan without permission from their higher-ups. When Sheridan destroyed the Drala Fee or Black Star or whatever it was called, he ended up killing a lot of the third Thane of Chutomo. And so they wanted to get revenge on him. And so they set up Lavelle and the whole shebang. We discovered it because in the burial instructions for Lavelle, everything was to the religious caste of the third Thane of Chutomo. And Lavelle was supposed to be a member of the warrior caste. Sheridan basically works it out by kind of tricking Ashawn into confessing. And he's like, look, we've got the evidence here. We don't need to make this whole thing public. We can just make the parts public we want. It's not lying. It's not telling the truth. It's just telling our version of the truth. And we'll leave Lavelle's motives up to a big mystery. It gets Sheridan off the hook, and we don't have to implicate Lanier or his clan, thereby letting Lanier save face. Yay! We end up finding out towards the end that Londo gave Veer a glowing reference to keep him on Babylon 5. And Londo then, of course, tricks Veer into thinking that he has invited his entire family to come and stay with him in his quarters for an entire month. And, of course, Veer responds by slamming a drink. While you're trying to get over a headache or a hangover, that's the best thing to do, is just slam another drink. Reality, what you want to do is chug tons and tons of ice water, because alcohol dehydrates you very severely. Take a vitamin B capsule, because it also depletes some of the vitamin B. And then my mom always said to take an aspirin. I always took a Tylenol, or excuse me, a Advil. Want to avoid Tylenol, because Tylenol also inflames your liver, and you can give yourself really bad liver toxicity by drinking and taking Tylenol at the same time. Of course, with any sort of ibuprofen or anything like that, you also have to be careful too, because that can also cause you to have stomach ulcers. So, if you do have problems with that sort of thing, talk to your doctor and see what they recommend. It's just for generic Joe and Q public. If you can take anything, you have a cast iron stomach, and your liver is 110% fine, that's what the recommendations kind of are. Other than just doing what I had to do about 18 years ago almost, and that is to just quit drinking entirely. So, that's the best way to avoid a hangover, is don't drink. Shocking, I know. We ends up going in, this hilarious, Sheridan finds Ivanova with the Babylon 5 bear. Somehow he ends up throwing it out the airlock, as he has completely ordered the shop, the gift shop, completely closed by 0800 tomorrow. He takes the bear and chucks it out the nearest airlock. And in one of the funniest moments, Zeta Squadron leader is taking out a Star Fury pilot, presumably to figure out what that ping is near Babylon 5 station. All of a sudden, this bear goes right up against his windshield and goes up and over. And she's like, "Can you please explain that?" And he's like, "No, not in a million years could I explain that." Now, very humorous. As far as I know, that's impossible, since there's no gravity to hold it to his windshield, or there's no wind to blow it around. How could that be? But like I say, it's science fiction, not science fact. If any of you have an explanation, but it is also heavily memed, you'll see bear just kind of smacked up against a windshield, and then various things are coming out of Zeta Leader's mouth. In the memes. But anyways, kind of an interesting episode. As you all know, I love anything with Ambassador Kosh in it, so this one has plenty of him, plenty of Ambassador Kosh in it to satisfy me till the next episode. Anyways, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm taping this day before Thanksgiving, so if you are celebrating Thanksgiving tomorrow, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. We are this close to 100 subscribers, so please get the word out there. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I am out of here.